Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. It's a new dawn, a new day, a new era potentially at Tottenham Hotspur, or is it an error? How are you feeling about this? I know we've got one man here who knows how to feel about a thing or two. He's had to change his entire digital branding. You have to give up so many years, so many hours or months of hard work on his Twitter handle because it no longer makes any sense. In a year's time, people are going to say, what's Levy-nomics mean? I don't get it. We're now Saudi-nomics, aren't we? We're Aramco-nomics. We're going to be something new. We're going to figure out what that looks like. What does the future hold for Tottenham Hotspur? Guys, before we get into it, smash the like button for me. If you are happy or sad this morning, hit the subscribe if you haven't already. If you are watching this and you want to participate into the chat, all you've got to do is rub the sub, hit the notification bell and drop a comment or two. Let us know your thoughts thick and fast. And lastly, guys, this show is, of course, going to be on Spotify and Apple Pods and Amazon and all that stuff. If you like any of those podcast formats, then you can check them out. The links are in the description below. Please give us a 5-star rating and a follow over there. Lastly, today's video, of course, is sponsored by the wonderful people over at OK Jersey, okjersey.com. If you take the QR code, it should open you up. But if not, just okjersey.com, where you can get the best shirts in the business for very cheap money, £15 give or take, depending on where you are, and all the names and numbers that you want, not just Tottenham, but anything else. And also, if you use the code Sean at checkout, you get an 8% discount. I even think they do free shipping as well. Can't ask fairer than that. So look, maybe you can go and get something creative with Levy 0 on the back. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, Connor, how are you, mate? How are you doing? How are you feeling this morning? Is this your first chance you're having to talk about this, or were you did you go on a stream yesterday?
No, I was on. I went on Hotspur Hood for a bit, and then did Spotlight on Spurs as well. So I've chatted about it a bit, but obviously, having a night's sleep to reflect gives you, further chance, I think, to think about it. And obviously, more reports have come out, right, as well, around the sort of some of the speculated details around what's happened, which to be honest, I'm still a little bit skeptical and cynical of, as I always am with some of this journalist crap. I just think, a lot of it is very opportunistic, guessworky. One person comes out with something, they all then seem to get, no one said anything the day before, all suddenly, and then suddenly all these bombs drop about, the ins and outs of what's happened. And it's a bit like the in the know stuff, isn't it? I think I know there were rumours earlier in the summer that he was stepping aside from football, but no one knew the statement was dropping then, and no one. I don't think anyone said that he was being completely stepped aside from the board. I think that's what's perhaps come as a bit of a shock to people. But a lot to think about. And I have to say, we'll get into it, but I am finding some of the rhetoric, if it has come from the Lewis family, pretty hypocritical, I have to say. But we'll get into that.
Well, let's start with, obviously, what we do know is that Daniel Levy has been stepped down, according to the official communication. He's stepped down from the board, but there is a lot of noise out there that's saying that he was forced, he was pushed, that the Lewis family are the children, the descendants of Joe Lewis. I mean, we saw things from Sky Sports sources close to the family. They want what the fans want. We had a big debate about what that meant on Spurs 5 last night. That was a fiery show. Gee whiz, got a bit personal, didn't it, at times? But the sort of narrative that was coming out from that from the Sky guy was essentially saying that the Lewises want to, embark on a more, I guess, on a pathway to deliver more success. And as you've always said, Connor, it's not your gripe wasn't necessarily with Daniel Levy. It was with the Lewises and ENIC generally for not putting in more money. So this notion that that they're frustrated with Daniel Levy and they don't think that he's been ambitious enough. Well, in order to be more ambitious, I mean, you can suggest maybe you could spend more money on salary of what we had, but you could have also had a plan B, which was to give them some more. And that would have started with the people that are in charge of ENIC, which, funnily enough, are the Lewis descendants to some degree, right? And that whole family. So, I mean, is it just opportunism from the Lewises to if that whole narrative is true, right? Is it first and foremost, is it opportunistic of them to sort of sit there and blame the guy who's on his way out, or is it honest?
Yeah, I think that there's so many moving parts to this. I mean, look, for all of his flaws, and he's made mistakes, but everyone would if they'd done a job, which is a tough job and a tough gig to have. As football chairman for 25 years, you're going to make mistakes, and I've got a whole host of criticisms of him. But I think the one thing you can't deny about him is he's done a fantastic job for ENIC themselves, right?
Yeah.
The taken the sort of initial investment of 90 million, they've put in, is it 122 plus 30? Yeah, about 250 million total, right? And the club's now worth 3.5, 4 billion. So in terms of the job he's done for them, you can't say it's anything other than outstanding, right? And he was clearly, more dedicated to the football club than Joe Lewis was, right? Levy was at every game. I think you can't deny that he's worked hard. We can talk about choices and all of that type of stuff, but he's obviously been dedicated to Tottenham in terms of his work ethic and everything else. Now, you could say that was for self-gain versus whether it helped the football club, but that's a separate argument. So this sort of throw into the wolves, which is coming out now, I think it's just so hypocritical, the Lewis family. I think I messaged you straight after I saw because the Athletic made the point, that the children are now much more concerned about sporting success, and they're worried that we haven't had consistent on-field success. And it's like, well, you might want to have a word with Dad first, before you start to, because Joe Lewis was the one who decided to only invest £5 million of his own money on average each year for the last 24 years. We know that Levy obviously was rich on paper with what he owned in Tottenham, and obviously he's a wealthy man, but he didn't have the sort of money to pump into a football club to make it grow. That would have been Joe Lewis, and Joe Lewis has taken zero interest in Tottenham. He's stuck himself in the Bahamas. He's spent more on paintings for his personal art gallery than he has on transfers. So I think it's almost Levy's been levied by this by this statement and stuff. And look, I think let's see whether maybe he has. And look, maybe the children have got a different view. Maybe they have. But what I would say is that trust arrangement's been in place since 2022, by the way. So, they haven't done anything different for the last 3 years before this most recent decision. Even now this summer, obviously, there's rumours that ENIC were going to pump in more money. We haven't seen that yet. And if they were going to do that via way of a share capital increase, which has been their normal way of doing it, they have to report that via Companies House within 30 days. So we haven't seen that yet. The only thing that we have seen financially is that the club's taken out another loan facility with Macquarie.
Do we?
No, we don't. But it's one of those that's secured against future Premier League revenues, and it's probably to manage short-term cash. But to me, that contradicts ENIC putting in more of their own cash, because why would they need to do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll see what happens. But at the moment, I think there's some small benefits of the change in terms of, obviously sometimes fresh leadership is just exciting and needed, right? And you find this in normal business, that CEOs become stale, right? And you need that fresh ideas and I think we've discussed it before. Levy was probably starting to get out of his depth at this level and this size of organisation. Charrington will have a lot more experience running an organisation of this stature and size, albeit not football, but just in terms of his professional career. So you get that, and then there's the whole negotiation thing and the bridges that Levy has burned. But for me, I can't see fundamental changes unless ENIC really change their own modus operandi. Or is this the preamble to a full sale and takeover, and we're just being fed these lines at the moment? Who knows?
Yeah, well, in terms of within that statement as well, it says there's no change to the ownership structure. Now so if they put that out officially as an official statement, then that has to be legally correct as of the time of writing, right? Yeah. So what we can, if I'm not mistaken, again, I'm not an expert in law, but by any stretch, I'm a complete novice at it. But I would imagine that the the reality is that if there is the money, if there is this kind of injection of capital, then even if it came from the Lewises and it had come from, if it had come from them, either it's not in yet, or because even the Lewises putting money in would have to come in some form of either a loan or more likely a share issue and therefore there'd be some sort of dilution of minority shareholders, yada, yada, yada. So the fact that there's no change to organizational ownership structure at the moment suggests that either hasn't happened or has come in via a sponsorship, or that hasn't been announced officially, or has come in, like you say, via a loan to cover whatever spending we managed to do during the summer. But that doesn't mean that has to stay that way for very long, right? Do you expect there's going to be, more statements? Someone texted me yesterday who works at the stadium, at the training ground, and they were saying that, and again, I'm not saying to be ITK here, I'm just passing this information on gently, that apparently Levy and Vinay were both in the media room at the training ground yesterday, doing some sort of recordings of things or whatever. So maybe there's a message, like a farewell video that's coming out in the next couple of days, maybe today, whatever. It's going to follow up on the statement. But in terms of the kind of what's coming next, all we know right now is that Daniel Levy is no longer on the board. He's been replaced by somebody who, as far as I understand it, again, not an expert on these things, but my experience in the corporate world would suggest that a non-executive director, the only difference between a non-exec and an exec, generally speaking, is voting rights on the board. But if you are a conduit of the actual overall owners, which of course Charrington would be, then he will have the leverage without needing a vote. He will actually have the leverage to be able to tell people, this is what we're doing now. So it's kind of like a, I don't know, implied vote just by the influence that they'll have. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's I made the point when Vinay was first hired that it was odd. It was odd to have an executive chairman and a CEO. In the corporate world, that would very, very rarely happen. You have a CEO and then you have a non-executive chairman, and the CEO runs the day-to-day operations, but they effectively report into the non-executive chairman, and the non-executive chairman can make that decision to replace them at any point. Obviously, we're a bit different because we're not listed, but that's broadly the way it would work. Now, but what I anticipated happening over time before, was that Levy would become a non-executive chairman rather than executive chairman and have less to do on the footballing and the day-to-day, but would still be there in terms. So that's what's really interesting for me, because he's been completely moved off the board. He's lost obviously his £3 million salary, and now he's basically just a silent shareholder, right? So with no say at all, no say obviously on the day to day, but not even that sort of non-executive role on the board where he would have a say. So
That's quite. I didn't realize. I forgot that. Yeah, of course, he's not getting paid his salary anymore.
No.
Do you think that was part of the, all of these rumors? And again, they're all just hearsay. But all of these rumors around potential previous investments with Qatar and Stavely and the consortium from the Middle East and private equity from the West or whatever. Every time there was a deal that was close to being arranged, that apparently there was some final 11th hour cop blocking of some sort or another. And there was always, take what you want from the likes of Matt Law, who have been wrong most of the summer about everything to do with Tottenham, most of the year actually. That they've always been saying that Daniel Levy was like the kind of the spoken, or the kind of stick in the wheel, if you like, was that Daniel Levy always said, if there's going to be any investment, if there's going to be any takeover, anything at all, that he wants to remain on because he wants his lovely salary. The fact that he's been sidelined, is there? I agree with you 100% that we shouldn't be sitting there just sort of all of a sudden kiss arse in the Lewis's children, just because they've come out with some noise that they want to do more or do better when they could have been doing better the entire time. But there probably might be some sort of gravitas to the idea that Daniel Levy being stepped aside is a consequence of them wanting that investment and finding out that Daniel Levy always kind of cop blocked it to some degree. And once they got wind of that, then they're like, okay, you know what, we're going to force you out the way, and then we can now get on with whatever the next phase should have been a couple of years ago.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, as you say, there was a lot of rumours about that. I did feel some of it was a bit opportunistic to bash Levy. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of I've been pretty consistent in this. As you mentioned at the start, my bigger issue's just been with the way that they decide to operate as a sort of entity rather than him as an individual. And I did feel some of that stuff about the takeover was just used as an opportunistic way to drive that Levy out agenda. And I've always said that just getting Levy out, I don't think changes anything unless ENIC have completely had a brain transplant in the way that they want to operate based on the kids coming in. To me, there's a few things that don't quite like add up in my head when I'm sort of trying to sort of connect the dots, which is, you know, we get told that the decision was made Thursday. So the Athletic are saying Levy was told last Thursday, he's being stepped down. Then there's
Yeah,
these stories that a review was done all the way back in January, and we've known the whole summer. But then you look at the appointments that were made, Charrington in March, Vinay in June, which is sort of your traditional succession planning. So that implies to me we knew sooner. But then at the same time, why did Vinay and Levy do that joint interview at the start of the summer?
100%.
You know,
100%.
why not just have Vinay do one, right? So this is
I
what's
guess it
making
was
me think,
Daniel
is this
Levy trying to
actually
stay face, right?
yeah, maybe, but is this just a preamble to a sale then? You know, actually, and we're not being told the full picture, and Levy
We're
stepped
definitely
down
not
because
being
that's
told
what
the full picture.
no, of
100%.
course we're
We
not.
don't know
No,
anything right
no.
now, you know.
But I just can't see how. To me, that just seems odd. You know, that whole sort of sequencing point of particularly Vinay and Levy doing that interview together, because if you believe that the review started earlier and all of this was succession planning, why have them do that interview together? Why not just have Vinay do it as, this is the introduction to our new CEO, and then do one with Levy now when he's going? It makes me think that
Maybe,
they are, some of these steps are actually the preamble to a sale, as I say, or a full takeover. But maybe
or
that's
could
my
it just mean
optimism.
that there was like along the path, there's been a hell of a lot of infighting, a hell of a lot of backroom squabbles, and Daniel Levy not falling on his sword, not going down without a fight, welcoming Vinay in, maybe Daniel Levy being sidelined and not being entirely aware of what the overall intentions were. Maybe the first appointment and this, like the Charrington appointment was like, listen, I'm just here to kind of oversee. I'm just doing a few bits and pieces here. Don't worry, I'm a fly on the wall rather than an influencer. Then Vinay comes in, and Daniel Levy's being reassured about everything. And it's only when everything else is put into place that Daniel Levy finally gets gets told more recently, listen, this is your last dance. He had the Gary Neville interview, and he was saying that he's still hands on in all the transfers. And again, though, there's language within that Gary Neville interview which makes you think that he was probably aware, like, oh, you're going to appreciate me when I'm gone. Like, mate, did he know at that point that he was going to be gone? Or was he saying that more around just kind of like philosophically speaking, like in his mind, 10 years down the track, that Tottenham fans would look back and think actually he wasn't as bad as they thought he was?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, even part of you starts to think like the timing of that interview was that his way of like getting, his say across, and to your point, look at this great stadium I've delivered and all of this type of stuff. So, and because we've discussed before, he's not been an open communicator, right? He's
Yeah.
not been, he's done a couple of things like the Bloomberg interview, the Cambridge or Oxford Union, I can't remember which one, but generally he's a bit of an introvert, Levy, right? And I don't think he particularly feels comfortable doing that type of stuff. And then suddenly comes out and does the Neville overlap thing just before this news. You start to think, this is all, a bit timely. But look, I do come back to, I think I think I'm still skeptical of whether the Lewis family have really changed, because I get that it's the kids and the grandkids now rather than Joe, but equally, you know, um, it's been since 2022, as I said before, and right now we have no evidence that they've particularly changed. Because even the window, right, the window was much better in terms of the quality of player that we went for, but we didn't necessarily. And the wage profile was obviously an increase, but equally at the same time we lost Son and Werner off the wage bill. So it's not, it isn't like financially we've acted drastically different in the window to how we have. It's just actually an improved, profile of player. So, and given you got Champions League money and things, so that hasn't. So I don't think there's any evidence yet, other than this Levy decision and him moving on, that anything in terms of the way that they operate the club has particularly changed, right? In terms of the parameters, but who knows how that's going to play out over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone that's always. I see someone in the chat there saying that the problem with you, Butler, with Levy apologists like you, Butler, the problem with where is he? This geezer. Is you have continually banged on about your chairman doing things organically and thus creating a PSR headroom. So, and how's that a problem, by the way? It's just a fact. You haven't really landed on the problem part. Problem with you, Sean, is that you've said things. Listen, I think that Daniel Levy has done a good job to put us into a position now where you do still have a shitload of spending headroom. And the fact that we've got those players on loan, we might at the end of the day, if it turns out that we don't want Polinia, if in the next 12 months, there is a movement towards a takeover, then the takeover might want to come, whoever it is, the Saudis or Qatar, private equity, whatever else, they might want to come in and drop a lot of money to rebuild the squad in a heavy way very fast, right? And by doing those loan deals, then they've actually got the ability to send Mawani home because he's not the level that we're looking at. Send back Polinia because we want to go after, one of the best sixes in the game, one of the best nines in the game. And so, I mean, how much money do you, off the top of your head, do you know how much PSR headroom we've got for the Premier League and for UEFA? We've got a lot for UEFA, right?
Not for PSR. So, for PSR,
a lot from the Premier League. Sorry, not UEFA. A lot from the Premier League.
Yeah. So for the Premier League PSR, because of the way that the amortization would work, and the way obviously it depends on exactly what split in terms of transfer versus wages and stuff. But I mean, last time I looked at it, you could probably spare, because we can afford an actual loss of like 275 million. So in reality, that means you could have a 400, 500 million pound transfer window and be fine because of the way that it sort of spreads through.
And you get initial new investor more wiggle room as well, don't you? You get like an extra 30 million quid or so, extra 50 million quid or something. From
basically everyone gets that now though, because they changed the rules. Before it was to get that you had to have had your owners inject some equity. Now they just have to write a letter to say that if the club made enough of loss, they would secure it. Yeah, so basically everyone gets it. But then the UEFA one is a bit tighter, but we've still got a lot of room, particularly now we've got this growth in revenue, obviously, for this most recent year. So, even from that perspective, it would be less, but like a 300 million pound window would probably be fine, depending on the exact split between transfers and wages, as I say. So, so that's because to me, if it is just the Lewis family, maybe the kids are a bit different, right? Let's just run that argument for a second. Are they still though going to really it's not going to be comparable to say, Middle Eastern money taking you over, is it? You sort of Tavistock Group and the Lewis family are obviously very, very wealthy, but I don't think their way of running businesses is necessarily to invest huge amounts of money still, even if they decide to put in a bit more extra. Whereas, if we were fully taken over by Qataris or Saudis or whoever it might be, you could see a situation whereby, there's an unfettering ambition to win. They will literally pump in hundreds of millions of cash because they've got to spend nothing on infrastructure. And I suppose that's why, to me, if we're talking just purely in terms of wanting the football club to be successful, obviously the ideal would be a proper takeover.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think though that there's problems with any of those. So the Saudis couldn't take over Tottenham, not directly because of the PIF fund being involved with Newcastle.
Not via PIF, I suppose it would have to be. They could, I suppose, if it wasn't PIF and it was just a wealthy individual or family from Saudi, but not PIF.
Yeah. But even then, they'd have to go through the owners' test, the examinations, and that. And you just know the one time that there's a blockage on an ownership, it will be for Tottenham.
Us, wouldn't it? Yeah,
100%. So Spursy. You even fumble a trillionaire. You know? And then Qatari. I mean, Qataris don't own anyone in the Premier League, but they do obviously. The QSI at least. Again, like their equivalent of the PIF fund, the QIA and QSI. They already own PSG, and so the most they could own in the Premier League directly would be 25% as a minority investor. Again, unless it was some sort of consortium that had absolute separations and Chinese walls between them and the people that currently own a club in Europe, right? So after that, I don't know where else you go. I think Brunei, they've got an interest in football, but they haven't got any particular football stakes yet. And then obviously there's also Brunei and what's the other one? Hang on a second. Kingdoms in.
I mean, you've got because you've already got Abu Dhabi obviously involved in City.
Oh, Kuwait. Kuwait. You could do the Kuwaitis are massively into football as well. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there was the chat as well about Malaysia in the past, Chinese investor. But I think if you want that Middle Eastern attitude to money, you're right with the ones. I think the Qatar rumours before, you could see Qatar wanting to be involved in a Premier League football club, couldn't you? Because they're, it's that sort of competitive thing with Saudi, isn't it, and the rest of the Middle East. And Qatar also has a lot of involvements with the UK economy more generally, which is I said this on Dan Hotspur Hood yesterday. I was like, someone in the chat was moaning, they didn't want Qatar money, and I said, these are probably the same people who then go and do their shop in Sainsbury's, not knowing that Qatar own, a percentage of Sainsbury's, right? It's in every aspect of our life anyway, right? So, and to be honest, for me, I want to see my football club win. So I'm not particular. I don't get a particular sort of moral obligation.
I'll park all that shit. I got no problem doing that stuff anymore. I used to talk about it, not so much of a place of I've got a problem with it, but I think it's always worth exploring those topics with the fans, right? Like, do you have an issue with it? Is it like success above all else? I mean, you look at Newcastle United. Like the second that they were bought, everyone was wearing tea towels around their head down at St James's Park, which is hilarious. I mean, so wildly inappropriate, but so hilarious at the same time. But they haven't had any issues with Saudi turning their away kit to green and white to mimic the flag. Like, there is a sort of slight dilution of the brand of the club with those sorts of. Would Qatar come in and force Tottenham to have sort of like that shade of pinky red, that magenta in their kit? Would that be acceptable to Tottenham fans, or would Tottenham fans have a meltdown about that? Because nothing like a good old fashioned meltdown. In a Tottenham fan,
not red at least, is it? It's sort of magenta, as you say. It's a bit West Hammy almost, isn't it? It gets closer to claret, probably. Yeah. But no, it's and perhaps the other one. I mean, is private equity money, right? And that's that's the other big play in football at the moment. I mean, obviously Todd Bowley at Chelsea and Clearlake is the most prominent example now, but also you're seeing huge growth across Europe in terms of private equity money flowing into sort of stadium financings and things. Real Madrid and Barcelona both fully did theirs through ours. I mean, ours is effectively financed via it's debt financing rather than equity, but it's a similar type of firms that are picking that investment up. So it could be that. I mean, I would rather, if I was to pick, and obviously we don't get a pick, but just for the purposes of this hypothetical conversation, I'd rather have Middle Eastern money than private equity money, because I think they just have a different attitude to what they want to get out of it,
carefree.
Right?
But,
they're carefree, exactly. Yeah. And even they want to return on their, these
of course,
PIF, they didn't buy Newcastle for the fun of it. Part of it is sports washing, but they do want to return on their money as well, right? And they will get one. but it's just not quite such a focus as it is with obviously the private equity firms.
What do we think now then regarding the property portfolio? You know, like is the hotel? I haven't seen any much improvement in the hotel. You know, I think it was the end of last season they'd already done the groundworks, and we're now 4 months later, and I didn't see much in the way of growth over the summer. Do you think there's any truth to the idea that whole project is a little bit shelved until they get through this murky period of change? But like I said, I could be wrong. But when I went back to the stadium, I wasn't really paying attention or looking out for it. But I feel like I would have remembered seeing a half-built hotel. But as far as I can tell, it was still just the groundworks that were complete. Unless I'm, did you see anything when you were at the stadium? I don't think so.
No, I don't think they've made that much progress on it. But I mean, that happens with building work, doesn't it? Suddenly, like the foundation bit seems to always take a huge amount of time, and then suddenly it goes boom.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and I can't see them canning it just because of the amount of work that's already gone into it, and also I think it was part of the business case behind Tottenham getting the being the chosen stadium for the Euros as well. So I think I never quite believed that stuff about that being canned. I think that will happen.
Yeah, and all of the other. So I remember someone telling me, was it Johnny? I think it might have been Johnny. Was telling me that part of the intentions that were part of the Qatar conversations. And I don't know who told Johnny that. I'm not even sure if it was Johnny, to be honest. Like, so many people tell me so many things. That they were interested in sort of doing a takeover or an investment in Tottenham, but part of their plans were to be very much involved in the sort of the gentrification of the area as well. And they wanted to build this kind of like a Wembley Way thing down the high road. There's sort of like a walking thing that walks from a new, because apparently, I don't know if, again, I'm sort of weirdly cloudy in my memory right now with regards what the details were. Am I right in thinking that there's currently still an underground station, an old underground station that's been discontinued in Tottenham or around Tottenham, near Tottenham, that people like? I'm not sure if it's on the Tottenham Hale line or if it's somewhere else, but that could be reopened and it's closer to the stadium. But the cost of doing so would be like $1 billion or something like that, and that there was some intention of building that around the kind of Wembley Arch type thing that apparently that's part of the long-term plan as well. Do you know anything about that, or am I imagining?
Yeah, I mean, because there were that rumours because Flav Bateman, he did that podcast, didn't he, with the guy who apparently knew about the Qatari. I mean, I take it all with a bit of a pinch of salt, to be honest, but and the Qataris wanted to definitely on that, according to that podcast, was that they wanted a tube station to be closer to the stadium, right? And because obviously with Seven Sisters being that half-hour walk that seems longer than half an hour every time you do it.
Yeah. It's quite enjoyable on the way down, but on the way back, it's a long walk back.
It's a slog, isn't it? But yeah, that was apparently the rumor that they wanted to get a tube station closer to the ground, and yeah, there was rumors that they wanted to regenerate Tottenham. I mean, part of that might be like Man City's owners have done, right, in Manchester around the City Stadium. They've done a lot of regeneration, haven't they, of the local area because it sort of feeds into the wider sports washing piece, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be amazing if that was part of it. But then again, would we be frustrated? Imagine if there was a takeover, and the first things that were announced were, the Tottenham Way, the Tottenham Art, like the walkway, and a reopening of some old Victorian underground station, and you're like, wait, what? What are we doing here? We got trillionaire owners, and the first billy we're spending is on bloody regentrifying Tottenham.
Sign Mbappe, lads. What you doing? Yeah.
Out.
I'll have to change the Qatari-nomics, right?
Yeah, Qatari-nomics, exactly, 100%. Are you going to change your handle? Are you going to update it?
I don't know. I put a post up yesterday, like tongue in cheek, saying, "Oh, I'm going to need a new suggestion." And I got various, including someone went, "Why don't you change it to fix CUNT?" Which I won't use the word because I don't want to demonetize you. And this is one of my haters, which I enjoyed. He's the same person who accused me of stacking shelves before as a job. And but anyway, but I don't think I will change it. I think I'll leave it.
Twitter is a bloody horrible place. It's just full of nasty people that are always on the tear. It's brilliant though in its own little way in that regard.
It is.
So what do you think is the most likely next thing? Do you think that is the fact that there has been this loan application thing, which you don't know the details of it, but do you think that explains the cash flow and the ability to spend a little bit of money this summer, and by proxy of that, why we went for loan deals more than anything else? Or do you think that that there is maybe a Saudi Ramco stadium naming rights or whoever else coming in the coming days and weeks, because you can look at that sort of situation either way, can't you? And say, well, it wasn't that massive spend this summer. Technically, there is, or there could be, but they're loans first, so they're not really counting right now. But with that loan application or that credit facility, you could also make the argument that actually Matt Law was probably slightly more correct in returns in regards to the cash flow situation than I gave him credit for previously.
Yeah, I think you can read it a couple of ways. I think those sort of arrangements are so common as well, just to let everyone know. Macquarie have done it for a number of clubs. Actually, they've done it twice against Tottenham transfer fees due to other clubs. So they did it for Wolves and Forest. So Forest got a very similar arrangement with Macquarie for the Johnson fee so that they could get the cash quicker from Macquarie before we paid the cash over.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. And Wolves did it as well. I think Doherty maybe or something. I can't remember who the transfer was. But anyway, so they're really, really common. And we actually, in terms
but we're not
of
owed any money, are we? Are we owed any money for any particular players that we've sold?
Yeah, a bit. But our one is against future Premier League revenues rather than transfer fees coming in. So we're not owed much because most of the Kane money's been paid now. But yeah, I think they're really normal. And in terms of sort of revolving facilities or loan facilities to help us manage short-term cash flow, we actually didn't have a lot. We had the 50 million with HSBC before.
Yeah.
Whereas if you compare that to say Liverpool's facility was like 200 million. I think their short-term one. So other clubs. So that's all very normal. But you're right. It implies to me that they thought in the short term there's some cash flow points to manage, obviously with the money we're paying out now. But we also know the club also use our cash for property and things as well. So you never know how that's all going to be blended in. But I think the other thing you could read from it is, does this mean that they're doing this in the short term because they know an investment is coming in the future and it's not ENIC therefore putting in their money? Because to me, it contradicts ENIC putting in their money, because why would you need to do this if ENIC were just about to go and put 300 million in cash in?
Yeah, exactly.
Would you? So is it a short-term fix because something's coming in the future, or is it just actually nothing is changing and we need this right now because we need to manage cash flow?
Yeah.
So
everything's up in the air, isn't it? Everything's up in the air,
Yeah,
I mean, it's unclear to me. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm excited by the prospect of the unknown, because I do love change. Right? I think change is a healthy. It's a never present part of life, and so like you should not fear it. You should embrace it, and it's always exciting as well. But without the details, and when you sit there and look at all of the different communication points that we've had access to, even last night, you've got the Sky guy saying that there's the Lewises want to do more. Then you've got other people that are ITKs, quote unquote, that are saying that they're considering selling the entire club. And then you've got Ali Gold coming out saying that that's not the case. Would you rather see a full takeover at this stage? And by the way, within that, obviously, full takeovers of a company worth 4 billion, there's only very few people that are going to be able to do that. It's not like, it's not like a Crystal Palace or a West Ham or whatever, where you're going to get, a sort of a decent, a higher pool of probable and possible purchasers, which can be a good thing in that there's more opportunity, but it can also open yourself to more sharks. Like, I mean, would you want someone like John Textor in charge of Tottenham Hotspur? I sure as hell wouldn't.
No way. I mean, but you're right. I think it sort of works both ways, isn't it? Because generally, because of the size of us, there almost got to be a certain profile of person and buyer, haven't they?
Yeah.
And therefore you probably you escape some of those more questionable characters like the texters of the world. But at the same time, clearly there's less. I mean, I've always held the position. I think that if the club if they wanted to sell the club and they weren't being too greedy in terms of price, and they called say 3.5 billion, they'd sell it tomorrow, just because the Premier League is such a crown jewel. Prospective buyers know they don't have to spend a penny on infrastructure if they don't want to, and so you buy it for 3.5 billion. You spend 500 million, say, even on players, which again is over time as well because it's amortized and and the payment terms are over time. And the potential growth, and I've always been consistent on this in terms of the biggest way you can grow revenue for a football club is not through stadiums and Beyonce and all of that. It's through consistent success, right? Because if you're in the Champions League every year, and then your commercial deals get bigger because sponsorships get bigger, and this is the reason why Man City's revenue is now what it is, and Liverpool's is what it is.
Yeah.
And we've still got that bit of growth in ours, so we could quite easily, if we were consistently successful, get to 700 million revenue plus every year, right?
100%. Yeah.
And we were at 528 last year, and that 200 million pound of revenue extra creates an extra billion and a half of value for the prospective buyers coming in. So there is still that growth. People sometimes think there isn't that growth potential for us anymore, but there definitely is. Plus, people want a plaything, right? There's still a lot of billionaires, and there's still people that just go, "Oh, do you know what? Running a Premier League football club's a bit more interesting than owning some stocks, actually." So so I think it is going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've taken the news as someone who's critical of Levy, as I say. Obviously, overall, I'm happy because I think it was the right time for him to move on. But I'm nowhere near as excited as I would be if this news was, the Qataris taking you over. Clearly,
it might still come, but I guess
it might still come.
I guess the next question is like, in terms of the day-to-day running of the football club, in terms of the talent ID, in terms of the negotiations in transfers, in terms of the nickeling and diming, if Daniel Levy's been responsible for being the guy who is on top of the finances enough to also, but then his own negotiation style being somewhat of a hurdle, if he's out of the way, who is it that's going to be handling the negotiations? Who is it that's going to be figuring out the structure of the payments? Who is it that's going to be figuring out, let's use that sort of 2019 Jack Grealish example, right, where it was 5 million difference or whatever. I can't stand it as an example because you know why? There wasn't a single other chairman in the entirety of the footballing universe that paid that money
really
at the time.
Point, yeah.
Right. So, but the reality is that that's an argument that's always used, that Daniel Levy just he's sort of penny wise and pound foolish. Who do you see being the guy who figures out what the right price is to pay is? Is it going to be Vinay now, or is it going to be Paratici? And by the way, there's nothing official regarding Paratici coming back yet. People are saying that he's definitely coming back, but there's nothing official about that. And he's still got his own civil court
guy as well, wasn't he? He was the one that, by all accounts, Levy actually trusted, and so maybe Vinay and Charrington might have a different view, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So yeah, I'd love to know. I'd love to know, like, what who do you think it is that's going to be sort of? It's one thing to say, like, I'm the CEO of the footballing side, but does that mean that Vinay is now the guy that's going to be sitting there talking to the likes of Parish next time, saying, Adam Wharton, can we have a conversation about it? Who's going to be leading that, in your opinion?
Yeah. So just before I answer that question, there is the devil's advocate point about Levy, that perhaps he was penny shy, pound foolish, because he had to be, because he knew that ENIC were never going to put in their own cash, so he had to manage it. So, and this is where there's that sort of contradiction with the Lewis family, what they're saying now. Perhaps he had to be that way in his negotiation style, because he knew that they were never going to, in the way that Chelsea and everyone else, pumps their owners pump money in to help actually run the football club. He knew he didn't have that to fall back on. So there is that as a, unless the Lewis is completely changed or new owners come in, that isn't going to change, in my view, that much, right?
Sure.
Having a new face is helpful, just in terms of, people, if they personally didn't like Levy, they don't have to deal with him anymore. That might
Yeah,
help.
and that's fair as well.
But in terms of in terms of your question, I mean, if you use Arsenal as an example, right, because our model is now a bit more similar to Arsenal, whereby the owner doesn't really get that actively involved. Kroenke versus Lewis family, call it. You've then got the representative of the Kroenkes being sort of, as the non-exec chairman, being Tim Lewis, right? Say at Arsenal, and that's our Peter Charrington.
Yeah.
And then, or Josh Kroenke could be the parallel. But then at Arsenal, I would say what they probably do, or my leaning into it without knowing very specifically, is the budget is set by, the board, Lewis, Josh Kroenke on behalf of the Kroenkes, and then Berta is the one as the director of football he gets told this is your budget, and then he's going out and negotiating really. Whereas what we had before was it felt like our director of football had a smaller role, identify the players, but then Levy was coming in and doing the negotiations. Now you'd probably anticipate where ours would move. It would be Vinay that has that sort of negotiation, final payment terms type stuff based on the budget that's set for him by whoever the owners are, the Lewis family currently. But I don't think we give our directors of football as much power as other clubs do. And that's probably because they've been useless or been changed too often, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Levy was a micromanager, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes. Who knows? It might be the case. They might have I know they've just rolled Langer out for this interview post the window.
Isn't that interesting as well? Because we were all sort of, running the hypothetical that when he went back to Denmark for a holiday mid window, that he was being sidelined.
But look, I don't buy into this that Paratici is this god that others think he is, right?
I think he's dirty as hell, mate. I think he's like the guy's got so much dirt on his track record. Like, do you really want to hand over the keys to the kingdom to a geezer who literally had a ban that finished 2 weeks ago for inflating transfer fees?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's a risky one, isn't it? Like, does a leopard change its spots? Is he dirty as hell? So don't get me wrong. Like, he understands the Italian market, and I think his ID has been fairly good over the period of his time. Like, I'm not going to sit there and take that away from him. He's better than Hitchin. He's better than a lot of them that we've had before in terms of the players that he's managed to find within the realms, within the remit of what he's given. But the guy's still in court right now. Probably right as we speak, he's sat in the dock somewhere listening to a civil case around whether or not that his troubles are over. Like, if he's going to be the guy in the scenario that you're playing out, that we're going to hand someone more power, that Vinay's going to be the CEO and Berta's going to be, the Paratici role. So Paratici's going to be the guy that's handling all the negotiations and handling all of the footballing side with regards to transfers. It's a bit of a risk, isn't it?
100%. I think there's that. I think, look, there's the point about, I think, to be honest, his transfer record is actually mixed anyway. When you run through you got some real successes, but then you've got the likes of Royale and Brian Gill and others which were horrific. And the manager search was. No, I think that was Hitchin before. That was Hitchin's last one. Yeah. But then you've also got the manager search that he oversaw in terms of where we landed on Nuno, which was an absolute shambles as well. So he's got a bit of mixed stuff, and I agree with you. From what I know of Charrington, in terms of his history, plus I've told you before, I met him professionally in my career as well, right? I just can't see him wanting to get into bed with that type of person. The risk that creates, right? And you got to Charrington, someone who spent 26 years at City, a huge corporate running a private bank where, if you compare it to the corporate world, and we hate to do it because we want to talk about football, but are they going to take the risk on that type of person that it could quite easily go tits up and create a whole media issue again for us?
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked to see them get rid of both.
Yeah. Listen, I wouldn't be either. I wouldn't be either. If there's new people running the show, they might very well. And again, this could all be like this could all be in the as we've spoken about for the last 50 minutes, mate. Like there's so much conflicting news out there, so much, right? Like, and the story doesn't make sense. The timeline of things that we've seen, it doesn't make sense. It's like whenever I challenge people like Lubo on their logic, right, and about Daniel Levy, I'm like, I don't care if you land on Levy out. I want to see your working. At 1 point for the correct answer, 3 points for showing me the working out. And when people jump around their points to land, then that's when I challenge it. But I think you can make the same argument with regards this story. Like the story doesn't make sense, whichever one, and so therefore the answers that we're landing on could equally be entirely wide of the mark here. And so, with that being said, in a world where it's an entirely new sort of regime, if you like, or it will be, it could be a full sale, or it could be new people coming in with investment and they want to have more of a hands-on sort of footballing side role of it, then those people would entirely plausibly like to say, no, I want to bring in our own guys. I want to bring in, I don't know, a Louis Campos from PSG. Imagine if you had him follow the Qataris out of PSG and he comes in. Take that all day long. What about, I mean, that relationship that Wolves have got with Portugal. I think it's through Jorge Mendes, where he's like a super agent, but he just basically feeds Wolves all of the super talents that are coming out of Portugal. And then they do a year or two, at least that used to be the case, right? And so they have like a direct relationship with an agent that kind of connects them with that particular market and then brings them in for a year or two at Wolves and then sort of gets them Premier League experience. Some of them hit, most of them are pretty good, but not all of them land. And then they'll move on after that. Think about some of the players that have played at Wolves in there, and that have gone on to be brilliant superstars. You just don't know what's coming. But like I'd be entirely open-minded to the idea of something new because, as you said earlier, like Fabio Paratici was the one guy who had a close relationship with Daniel Levy. But if Daniel Levy's no longer here, then does Charrington, Vinay, those sorts of guys, do they have the same relationship with Paratici, or are they looking at a guy who they don't have a good relationship with and seeing his troubles, seeing his crimes, alleged crimes, whatever, that he's been found guilty of over in Italy and going, yeah, this guy's probably sort of a little bit too hot for us. Let's move away from him. Just like anybody that, if news coming into an organization, they're going to want to have their own sort of footprint, aren't they? They're going to want to make their own sort of stamp of their own brand on the sort of direction of travel. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm with you, Connor. I wouldn't be surprised to see a completely, I'm not saying it will happen. It might, tomorrow you might find the announcement, Paratici back, right? But it's entirely plausible to sit there and think that there's a whole new captain of the ship, and with it their own crew.
Yeah, and I mean, someone made the point in the comments, which is a good spot, that in the statement with this Levy news, they talk about Charrington, Vinay, and they specifically call out Frank, right, in terms of the team to take us forward. There's no mention of Langer, which is now I would say that would make sense if they hadn't mentioned Frank, but if Langer was your man going forward, that's almost the sort of final piece of that jigsaw of the sort of ownership management team taking you forward in terms of football. So perhaps that's implying there is something that's going to change there. We also know, obviously, back in August, there was that story around Catalina Kim, right, who's coming in to oversee the development of the club's corporate strategy and long-term partnerships, right? So that's another change that's been made at a very, obviously she's not a board director, but she's part of the executive team, right, and that very senior level. So yeah, it's all change, isn't it? I suppose, and it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how that plays out. But yeah, I would expect. I don't know. I would expect that it's absolutely plausible, as you say, rather than I would expect. That they might look to change that director of football, bring in their own man that makes sense. I mean, I did think I made this point yesterday with the Thomas Frank appointment. Frank reminds me a little bit of the Eddie Howe appointment at Newcastle, where you get this very sort of safe pair of hands. He's very different to an Ange in an interview. He's not going to say anything, controversial. He talks really well. He's a very good face, sort of to present. He's obviously a coach and stuff as well, but just in terms of the way he presents himself, it's very different. And he almost felt like a bit of that sort of typical safe pair of hands you get when you first move in a different way with ownership, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I worry, like, is there any chance though that new owners come in or new investment comes in a little bit gung-ho, and then you go from out of the frying pan into the fire, where you're suddenly like sort of where Man United find themselves, which is, a new lease of cash, right? A new amount of money to spend. There's some new, I don't know, the thresholds being raised, we'll call it. But then on top of that, a series of demands from the fan base to finally let the dog out of the cage, to finally go for it. And then you end up overspending because people will look at Tottenham and think, we can rinse them here. They've got a fan base that are demanding an immediate uplift in the quote unquote ambition. And then you end up buying. Think back to when Abramovich first came in, right? And I forget who the manager was at the time. Was it the guy who won the league with Leicester? I forget who it was. It might be the guy who won the league with Leicester.
Maybe.
What's his name?
Ranieri. Maybe,
yeah, was it Ranieri? I'm not sure, but basically Abramovich went like, and Ranieri said like, oh, what can I spend? And then Abramovich said, who do you want? And he went, what do you mean? Hey, who do you want? Who do you want? We'll go and get them. Well, anybody? Yeah, go on then. Who do you want? And they end up buying Jeremy from Middlesbrough, and like they sort of bought. He wasn't sure what he was really working with there. He bought some sort of shitty players that were better than what Chelsea had, and then he gets sacked because there wasn't immediate success. Mourinho comes in, and then he understands the real template here and goes, okay, if that's the case, then I want this guy. I want Drogba. I want blah blah blah, all this. And so is there any chance at all that Tottenham could end up in a situation where you end up with some lead balloons and some paperweights on your squad, but you've overpaid for them, and then you're like what Manchester United have been doing for the last 3 or 4 years? Or am I apparently we are over analysing it? Someone's already said talk about over analysing. Les, this is what we do here, mate. It's a Friday morning.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point otherwise? What's the point in this conversation, right?
Exactly, we're speculating.
Yeah. But look, I think, because I mean, the other example of that more recently has been Chelsea, right? And it's starting to perhaps come to something a bit more fruitful. And obviously they're in the Champions League now. We'll see what happens with them. But Bowley came in and just went mad, didn't he? And the Clear Lake and everyone. And I said one of the issues I think for Chelsea was they sacked or got rid of basically all of the old guard. So there wasn't football people, and there wasn't people that understood the Premier League and Chelsea necessarily as well as people before, and it was too quick, right? In terms of that, like just go mad and spend, and then you make mistakes. I think the thing for Tottenham, in terms of the base financials and the platform, we couldn't be in a better position, basically, right? Because you've got huge headroom when it comes to all of the rules, which Newcastle and others don't have. Separately to that, we've also got the wage headroom anyway, right? In terms of, and the squad is not in a position where, you've got to replace everyone straight away. Obviously, there's some changes to make, but we've been on that journey. So I think it is us in a different place, but obviously the owners can't just come in and just go absolutely mental straight away. They do need to be thoughtful about it.
Yeah.
But perhaps that is why Vinay's been high. Some of these we've already got, which then makes you think: is it they've put the pieces in place now, like the Vinay, the Frank, etc. Before, which is a little bit different to the way that you sometimes see it, where it happens after. Who knows?
Yeah, listen, mate. It's exciting though. It's exciting. I think someone, Lynch 616, always been a bit of an anti-Sean rhetoric, and that's fine. He says, Sean looking for all the negatives, not worth my time, this channel. That's absolutely fine, mate. You can go and find whatever else you're looking for, I'm sure, somewhere else. But we just like to chat about the both sides of the coin here, mate. This is what we do. This is what we do here. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Appreciate you stopping by, though, mate. Enjoy your day. Moondog, sorry, mate, I didn't see these. I've literally been absorbed in the conversation. Let me get to these members' milestones. Moondog, big up to you, mate. Member for 38 months. Jesus Christ. Over 3 years. I think you were my first ever member, Moondog. You're still here all this time later, buddy. I appreciate you so much. He says, sometimes it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm certainly not in any way, shape, or form against this move. I think that Daniel Levy has done a brilliant job. I will never reflect on him the way that some people choose to, which is just always reminding people of the mistakes. There's been loads and loads of good things as well, but I do subscribe to the notion that with the way that the game has moved and the way that money has moved into football, and the people that you're trying to compete with have a different relationship with money, it's probably time. It probably was the right time to take the brakes off, I guess, and to see what this car is capable of doing. Drop it down a gear and see. So I'm excited by it, but I still want to know what this looks like, because right now it's incredibly opaque to me. Appreciate that, Moondog. Thank you so much. El Dante, member for 16 months, another long-term member, mate. Thank you very much, and a moderator of the channel. Yes, Sean, how are we? Levy out. Time for success. I'm good, mate. I'm good. I got Henry Wright's wedding tomorrow, so today I'm going to be taking it easy because I think tomorrow is going to be out of control. So we're looking forward to showing you how I feel on Sunday on the live streams. But time for success indeed, El Dante. Should be good. Sean Hell, big up to you, mate. He says, the removal of Levy makes the return of Kane more possible, given close relationship of Vivian Lewis to the Kane family. That's interesting. I didn't know Vivian Lewis and the Kane family were close. Connor, were you aware of that?
No, but I can't see Kane coming back.
No.
At least not in the short term. It wouldn't shock me if Kane ended up at Barcelona. Actually, that's where I could see him going next as a Lewandowski. Maybe I'm just doing that because Lewandowski made that. So, but it feels like their type of move, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, I can see that. But £51 million apparently he can be bought back as of this January coming. Is the first time I think that release fee is there. I mean, mate, is that possibly the reason why we didn't go for an Ademola Lookman? Because we can make do with a loan fee for Kolo Muani, who can play in the 9 right now. And then, imagine if on January the 1st, imagine if you've got Harry Kane in the 9, Kudus on the right, Xavi Simons in the 10, and Muani off the left. The Polina and Bentancur, and then the back 5 as we know it. That's not a bad starting 11, is it, mate? Especially if you're still in the Champions League. I know Kane would be cup tied, wouldn't he, by then? So he's like, that wouldn't be out of work.
You know when people in the chat say we spend too much time talking bollocks. They might have a point. I can't see it.
Kitchen table at 5 a.m. stuff, isn't it? This. No, but wait, Connor, wait. Let me talk. Let me finish. Kane in the 9, bro. We're doing bits.
I can't see it, but I think sometimes as well. Look, Kane is obviously world class and he's brilliant, but sometimes in life you have to. It don't work that often, does it, when players return?
Nah, exactly. It doesn't. Well, it worked for Gareth Bale though. Gareth Bale was pretty good, wasn't he?
He did okay. He did okay. Yeah, he did. But I think that ship has sailed for us, and as I say, I think he'll go on to somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. To be honest, mate. Also. Mark Lambert, appreciate you very much, mate. Become a new member of the channel. I might be doing a fan phoning show this evening at about 8 or 9 p.m. with co-host Iron Drew. Remember last week's show was absolutely hilarious. That man can pull an accent out of his ass and then make it make sense with whatever he's talking about as well. He's absolutely sensational. Very funny guy. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate you very much indeed. Connor, how much more time do I have with you, my man?
5 minutes, mate.
Okay. So what's going, mate? Is there going to be another announcement? Any more clarity in your opinion around what's next before we get back to football next weekend? Or do you think we're all going to be left sort of spinning plates here and chewing the fat over things we have got no idea about for the next period?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that's true what you said about that, training video that because I do think they need to do more now. This is so seismic, right? In terms of to be honest, I'd quite like to have seen Charrington interviewed as well. Part of me thinks they might want to have Levy, I suppose, because it's sort of a farewell. But part of you also thinks, should it not be Charrington and Vinay doing an interview now, talking about what the future is and what their aims are and that type of stuff to try to squash some of this speculation, and so we know where we really stand. To me, again, that who knows? You sort of over to the point you overanalyze reading to things too much. But if they don't do that video, if Charrington and Vinay didn't do a video coming out and speaking about that, that fuels speculation that there's a takeover again, doesn't it? I think it's sort of yeah.
It is confirmed. This guy does know. He works at or he's always around the training ground. He said Vinay and Levy were doing a video shoot this week in the media centre. So I expect something will come out from the club in the next week or so while it's international break. Yeah, he also talks about, he goes, is it no coincidence that Simon Jordan and the Levy interview hasn't aired yet? As they were holding fire on selling to the highest broadcasting rights. It's an interesting guy who knows quite, he's always got good takes because he's hanging around that area quite a lot. So, you'd hope there'd be some sort of update there. A Daniel Levy goodbye message.
There's got to be more than just that statement yesterday, isn't there? Because I mean that statement yesterday obviously didn't share that much. So, but the club has got better at communication, compared to how it was, and I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? Because when the communication doesn't say the things you want it to say, we criticise. To be fair, but nevertheless, you have to give some credit for trying to improve that. And yeah, absolutely, this has to be the time to do more. But it's I mean, it's been a good summer or so for you as a content creator. We're getting to an international break where you think finally, what are you going to talk about? And then this drops as a bombshell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I remember I woke up yesterday morning, and was it yesterday morning? It must have been yesterday morning. And I put out, I do old transfer news, views, and claws. So it was just Tottenham update video. And after about 3 minutes of talking, I was like, yeah, I've got nothing to say here. What? How am I going to stretch this one out to be at least 8 minutes? Ended up being verbose like I usually am, got about 15 minutes out of it, but just absolute waffle. And I was like, this is going to be dreadful. The next 10 days are going to be absolutely nightmarish. How am I supposed to do any work? How am I supposed to get anything done here? And then went for a little nap, woke up, and was just happened to check my phone and then see this glunk. Oh my God, we're back, baby! We got some new things to talk about. It's exciting. But yeah, we have to figure it out as we move along. Connor, massive thank you, mate, for coming on, buddy. Go over to maybe the handle currently known as, but potentially formerly known as Levynomics 1882 on Twitter. And guys, if you are interested in this sort of content, but you prefer it on audio podcasts and things, then this is all going to be updated. All these videos are always updated onto Spotify and to Apple and Amazon and all that stuff. So please check us out over there. And please, if you are looking for an OK jersey or a football shirt, you won't find better value than £15, give or take, and 8% off at checkout with the code Sean at okjersey.com. I'll be doing some more giveaways for those as well. So we're going to leave it there. Connor, are you out? Are you around this evening? What are you doing tonight, mate? Any other shows lined up?
No, nothing else this evening. I think, I'm going to take a bit of a break tonight and maybe over the weekend. I need to. I did tell my wife I wasn't going to do any more this week, and then suddenly this bombshell dropped yesterday, and I was like, I need to do this one. So anyway, a bit of a chill one tonight.
All right, mate. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for checking us. I think there's a new member of the show as well, Ryan Showell. Appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you so much, mate. I have spoken to Edward at OK Jersey and given him your details. So hopefully that will get posted out to you very soon, my man. And I will see you guys later on for probably another live stream, maybe even the fan phoning show this evening, where I'm sure everyone's going to have some takes on this. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,